Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second panel discussion, implementing your sustainability strategy. You've heard a lot today about lots of things about sustainability, different aspects of it. So here with my four panelists, you will get information on how it's really done. They will share with you some of the challenges, what are some of the key drivers for sustainability? Why did they even think about creating a strategy plan? We'll hopefully get into who's benefiting from it, what are some of the market drivers, as well as what are some of the targets and how are they measuring the targets. So you'll get hopefully a good perspective and great insight into how to do this work, who are some of the partners that they are partnering with, whether it is other sector leaders or outside consulting firms. They may not name the firms, but they will let you know if those are happening. Again, we want to get real with implementing a strategy, and we want you to understand that it's not easy work, right? It takes time, and it does take expertise, and it takes a collaborative team to make this happen. So you'll hear that from our panelists today. I am Patricia Canning. I am a sustainability practitioner. Specifically, I work with organizations to help them think about how to interact with various communities so that they can have more impactful, more meaningful, and sustainable outcomes for those communities. My panelists are Jennifer Downey, Director of ESG at Turner Construction, Nina Panda, Sustainability Strategy and Engagement Manager at 3M, Alyssa Wiles, Senior Manager of Corporate Relations at Covanta, and Beth Johnson, Chief Experience Officer and Head of ESG at Citizens Financial. So as you see, it's a wide range of firms and organizations who have experience and are different phases of their strategy, of implementing their strategy. And so hopefully that, again, will give you a sense of what it takes and what's happening. So I'll first start out with asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves, talk about their roles, and talk about their company's journey. And then we'll dig a little deeper, go into some additional questions. And then finally, I'll ask you for questions, and we'll take questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so Jennifer, I'd like to start with you. Please introduce yourself, your role, and tell us about your company's journey.
All right, thanks, Patricia. Thank you all for having me this morning. I'm excited to talk to you all about our ESG strategy and some of the great work we've been doing at Turner Construction Company. As Patricia said, I'm Jennifer Downey. I'm the Director of Environmental Social Governance at Turner. Turner is the largest general builder in the United States. We had over $16 billion of work in place revenue last year. And while Turner was founded over 120 years ago, we're also extremely focused on building the future, thinking about what it means to be a sustainable company for the next 120 years. One of our over 40 offices across the United States is here in New Jersey, in Bridgewater. We have several representatives today here from our Turner office. Say hi. And when we talk about ESG at Turner, we're really building on this strong history of thinking about protecting and actively caring for people, sustaining our planet, and purposefully transforming our industry. Our ESG strategy is new from a formalization standpoint, but we're looking back at our history long, from the very founding through recent times of the areas that we've been able to lead the industry in those different topic areas, whether it's early days with the USGBC, our work with safety and wellness. A big addition in the construction industry is if you visit a construction site these days, you'll largely see people wearing hard hats that have a strap. They're safety helmets, not the hard hats that you think of traditionally, which are a really important way to keep our workers safe on our job sites. But this is really based on this idea of a broadened definition of sustainability, that we're building on our work with the environment and taking it to those next components. So you asked us to talk about drivers and process and things like that. So drivers for us are coming from all different directions. I think fundamentally and most importantly, this is about bringing together these core cultural elements of our company into this one combined strategy that ties together. I think in the last panel, one of the last questions you all were talking about was this idea of segregated reports or combined reports. For us, our strategy really is about combining all these pieces that are really important together. So if we talk about a material that goes into our building with our clients and our design partners, we're looking at environmental components, we're looking at schedule and cost components, but we're also looking at things like the human rights behind the materials and where they're coming from, and all of those pieces coming together into that one approach. We began with a materiality assessment in about this time last year. And so for that, we're looking at information from a variety of stakeholders, internal and external. And again, because our drivers are coming from both sides, we're hearing from our employees that this is important. We're hearing from our clients that this is important. And, as we took a look at the organization, we identified that it's important to the very, very important to the company as well. So I think I'll leave it at that and let Nina introduce herself as well.
Great, thank you. So great to be with you all here today. My name is Nina Panda, and I work in the global sustainability team at 3M, focusing on strategy and engagement. But my background before being in sustainability is in finance, accounting, and sales strategy. And so I think that's really important when we think about how we're approaching sustainability. The same way that retailers needed to shift to online some years ago, this is another business model shift. How are we adapting, and how are we kind of being ahead of the pack, or some companies might be left behind? And so that's really some of the approach that I take to sustainability at 3M, among the many other folks that I work with, both on the sustainability team and across the business. So hopefully you're familiar with 3M, because there are 3M products all around us, in this room, in the parking lot, in the street. But you maybe just know for Post-it notes, which, by the way, are recyclable. And one of the things that's so important about 3M is our dedication to innovation and unlocking the power of people, ideas, and science to reimagine what's possible. And so the ideas behind ESG and sustainability are really core to that, but also how do we step up to meet this business imperative that's coming related to sustainability? So thinking back to what has our journey been? 3M is also quite old. We started in 1902. Those M's stand for Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. Fun fact, if you're ever at trivia.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But in 1975, our company started a program called Pollution Prevention Pays, the 3 Ps. And this was an invitation and a challenge to employees across the business to look for ways to reduce pollution. Now, this also was a way to reduce costs, but improve our impact on the environment and reduce pollution. So the Pollution Prevention Pays program still exists today. It's still a great platform where we can recognize employees, and a database how folks can learn across our 600 some facilities. Hey, how did someone on this side of the country manage to electrify their process? Let's take that and replace that in Poland or in South Korea. And so kind of really having that in our foundation goes back to the idea of business. No one was talking about ESG in 1975. We just kind of wanted to meet some of those pollution standards, but also there was a cost benefit. So then if we think a little bit more about our history of sustainability, in 2002, we did our first greenhouse gas inventory. I know that's been touched on a little bit. And since then, with that knowledge, we've reduced our scope 1 and 2 emissions by around 80%. And so we still have some ways to go. We have a carbon neutrality commitment, but having that data of that, knowing what our greenhouse gases are, helps us to see where we still need to go. And then over the past few years, we've implemented a strategic sustainability framework. And so that's how we really make it personal. And so these are all kind of the components when you're thinking about ESG in your company, making it personal. How is it business relevant? And our sustainability framework of science for circular, how do we think things in a more circular way, doing more with less and reusing materials? Science for climate, how do we solve climate challenges? How do we address those, and adaptation and mitigation? And science for community, which is really how we can engage our communities with, for example, our environmental justice strategy and our work for STEM and skilled trades, and also advancing equity. So it's across those pillars that we have many of our technologies and our work for sustainability. But I think where we certainly aren't doing it alone, we have a number of partnerships that are also great ways that we learn and share with each other and advance some of these goals. So we have partnerships with other corporations through, for example, the Corporate Eco Forum. We have partnerships through the UN with the UN Global Compact and the UNFCCC, which hosts the COP conferences. But also local partnerships and really just kind of learning from other companies and sometimes picking up the phone and saying, hey, I met you at a conference and we're trying to get this and this target over the line with our leadership. How did you get leadership buy-in? And some of these really honest questions that you can ask someone after you've met them over here at the coffee machine. And so just kind of thinking about as we kind of go forward, how we're implementing our sustainability strategy for the future, we kind of look at some of the mega trends that are coming for this world, for all of us, for our businesses. Climate change is one of them, but also shifting demographics and social change. We've talked about that a bit today, and the convergence of physical and digital worlds. And all of those, we see an opportunity for innovation and sustainability. So I hope that's a good enough intro of 3M and myself, and then I will pass it on.
I mean, how do you come after that? My name is Alyssa Wiles. I'm the Senior Manager of Corporate Relations, and I just want to tell you guys that my allergies decided to be my +1 today. So if I'm sniffling all over the place, please forgive me. My path to Covanta was a little twisted in getting here. I have always been on the front lines for families and communities. Started out as social work, child protective services, moving into nonprofit child care facilities, running child care facilities, always in and around my hometown of Camden, New Jersey, making sure that I was standing on the front lines, making sure everybody had what they needed, wanted, what they deserved, what was promised to them. And when I met Covanta, now hear me, I've met Covanta. Now I'm from Camden, born and raised. My mother is still, in fact, in Camden. She's never, ever, ever leaving. And I met my now colleague, Jack Bernardino, during the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic, when we were, the children were home. We had sent children home. We weren't sure if children were going to eat. We weren't sure what was going to happen. We were unsure what was going to happen with ourselves. We were very concerned about families and children and what is going to happen. Are they going to really learn being on, with this digital divide? Many didn't have internet. And I can remember Jack Bernardino walking into our office. I was with the Camden City School District at the time, and working in the community engagement department. And Jack walks in the door and he's telling us this story about Covanta. And I'm like, but who are you? Is that a supermarket? Like, what are you? And I knew the building. I knew off of Exit 3, that pink building, that stack has always been there all of my life. But who are you? What is this? And he begins to tell me this story about decarbonizing. I'm like, huh? And he's telling me, we're helping companies decarbonize their output by what our zero waste to landfill policies, and how we're mitigating methane and greenhouse gases. And I was like, bring it down. I'm social work. Now tell me another story. And then he begins to tell me about their transparency and how they have real-time reporting of their emissions, how you can go online, covanta.com/Camden or Union or Essex, and you can see real-time emissions on what Covanta is emitting. Then he began to tell me about how they're investing in all of this new technology to make sure they are the very best neighbor they could possibly be, how $500 million has already been spent and making sure we have the best technologies, and we're lowering our emissions, and we're installing bag houses and all of these things. And he's telling me all of these stories, and I'm like, I'm so intrigued, because being from Camden, not many people, a lot of things were promised to us. When big business would come into the city, they would promise us a whole lot of things, but they would deliver very little. And then here's Covanta just walking in the door to tell us this story, to tell us who they are. And please just allow me an opportunity to your network to be able to tell our story. We're trying to get out here. We're trying to tell our story. We're trying to improve our Camden facility, which is right down the street and around. Oh, I know where you are. Didn't know your name, but I know who you are. And he got out there and he was telling this story. So then when they came back to pluck Alyssa out of Camden, to put her on Team Covanta, it was just that much easier for me. So I say that Alyssa is the intersection between environmental justice and ESG for Covanta, because I represent one of those communities where Covanta resides. I am the person who can then, they broke it down to me in bite-sized pieces to tell me that this is what they've been doing for over a decade. They were the ones, the only company that supported New Jersey's environmental justice policies. They have been on the front lines. And while we are always in the news, we recognize that. We are always in the news. We are willing to always be out in the community having those hard conversations, helping people to understand how it is that we can support, how we can provide. What else can we do to be a good neighbor to Covanta? And even on days like today, when you wake up and you think that your neighbors are barbecuing at 6:45 in the morning, like, oh God, my neighbor already has on his grilling shoes. Why is he grilling so early in the morning when the air is thick due to no fault of Covanta's, due to no fault of our own? We're sitting around trying to process how we can be a better neighbor. What is it that we can provide in cities like Camden and Newark when most people don't have central air and they're raising their windows to get air in on a day like today? Right. How can we be the very best neighbor? So I will say that Covanta has been doing this work for quite some time. This is not just now. We have been doing this work and we are steadily moving forward. I think what pushes us into the spotlight is our acquisition. When EQT acquired us back in 2021, there was a huge expansion, not just in my department. I oversee community outreach across the whole entire country, but we started to acquire other companies that were doing this work. We started to expand in our numbers inside. We have these things called ERGs, employee resource groups, where we are accountable to them, where they bring back their concerns and then we take it back to them, making sure that we are doing the very best work. We are transparent. We are doing the work and it has been being done. It is just now on a national platform. So I'm proud to be a part of Team Covanta doing this work in environmental justice communities all over the place. And I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
Thank you.
All right, so hi, I'm Beth Johnson. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Citizens Bank, recently entered New Jersey. So we're, depending on how you count it, the 10th or 12th largest bank in the U.S. And we acquired Investors Bank shares about a year ago and converted recently. So you probably are seeing more of us. My role at Citizens, when we say Chief Experience Officer, is really to build capabilities for the future for the bank. So I sit on our executive team, report to our CEO, and about last August, the board and our CEO said, Beth, can you also take ESG into your organization? And the reason was something we touched on a little earlier in the earlier panel and across here, which is how do we form a strategy of ESG that links to, we talk about our 3 C's, our impact on customers, our impact on communities, and our impact on colleagues. How do we set real goals and objectives for that across the bank? We use the word OKRs instead of what we had earlier today, but I think really important, and bring alignment across the whole organization to do that. We did launch our first corporate and social responsibility report back in 2018. So this isn't new. This is about aligning that strategy. We also have a TCFD report. So to the question on different kinds of reports in a CDP report, we are thinking about, and in our proxy, how do we start to bring some of this information and get together and make it more holistic? We also got together with our senior executives and different stakeholders and defined our strategy. So we have 4 pillars for ESG. We actually started with G. Because if you're a bank, governance is really, really important. So when we talk to our stakeholders, whether they're shareholders or regulators or the board, we wanted to ensure that we had strong governance in our organization and outline some real objectives there. Our second one is climate. So like a lot of this team here, we internally started out by managing our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, setting targets and goals. We entered into a virtual power agreement to offset our own emissions. But for us, and we're going to talk about it more later, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but the biggest thing for us on climate is actually how do we support our clients? How do we support small businesses and corporations as they think about their transition? And we needed help, by the way, in a bank on Scope 3. You need to measure the emissions of the companies that you lend money to. That is very challenging. So we did use some help to get that information. And then on the social side, we have 2 real objectives. The first is workforce development. When you think about a bank, a bank is in a unique position. We talk to a lot of clients about their needs around workforce and how is that changing. And we get to talk to things like educational sources in the community or community governments or other places. So we're actually investing a lot of money on workforce development, and we've announced that in New York and New Jersey as well. And then internally, when we think about workforce, it's everything to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we set real goals for our executives? I have goals. How do we make sure that inclusivity is part of that? I think you can get lost sometimes in the shuffle there and really make it part of how we're judged and how we're compensated at the most senior levels day in and day out. And then the last is fostering strong communities. Banks are critically important in fostering communities. So we do a lot of work in affordable housing and in some pretty creative ways. So most recently, we've actually started an innovative product where we add a little bit more money to our affordable housing lending so that there is money for broadband access. So we can help with the challenges around access in communities. And then the other one is really in supporting small businesses. So we do quite a bit of work with small businesses through grants, but also through, we have $6 billion between housing and small businesses that we do in lending to those communities and to those efforts. So for us, it's really that holistic picture that we think about from an ESG standpoint.
Wow. Thank you, ladies. That was a really insightful, great introduction. And thinking about ESG holistically, I'm glad that you touched on that and some of the challenges that comes with. I'm just going to go a little deeper now with each of you and just ask you a few more questions. Starting with you, Jennifer. We know that Turner is a leader in the construction industry, and you're certainly creating a holistic plan, strategy plan. One of the things I'd like you to touch on is how are you leaning into that S in ESG? I know that you're doing a lot of good stuff in terms of bias, and for, quite frankly, for a construction firm, that seems sort of left field, but I'd like to hear how you brought that into your strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about our strategy, there are 7 impact areas that we're focused on, and those span all 3 pillars. But if we look at the impact of our projects themselves, right, what goes into the buildings, what are the emissions and the energy used by our buildings, what's our impact of our own operations, the work that we do every day on our construction sites. And as we go into the people, we're looking at our employees, our business partners, and our community, as well as our broader impact on the world and our business. And when we think about the people side of things, one component that I think actually spans our employees, our business partners, and our communities is the topic of eliminating hate and bias on our job sites. It's something that we've dedicated, that we work every day to eliminate hate and bias on our job sites, because we want, and I think, frankly, everybody deserves to be able to work in a place where they can be themselves. They can bring their authentic selves to work every day. They feel safe. They feel included. And, whether that's through our employee resource groups or our work with DE&I with our employees or on our job sites. And if there's a zero tolerance policy on our job sites, if something's found, we shut the job down. Provide education for our workers. We've been working with the industry in general. There's a Construction Inclusion Week that happens industry-wide that Turner led the founding of. We share materials because I think this is something, this is one of the topics that we can't tackle by ourselves, but we can sort of lead the industry in and help bring that change about. And then when we think about the impact on our communities, right, that the work we do with our communities, how we work to build the economic areas of our community, working with local businesses, UBEs, how all of this kind of comes together to improve the impact on, again, our employees, our business partners, and our communities.
Are you seeing that you're creating a model and other companies are interested in that sort of thing? Companies in your sector, I should say.
Yes. And I think that there's collective agreement that these are important issues. And, the work that we do every day to build really fantastic buildings is still important, but the impact that we're able to make is also extremely, extremely important.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now I'll go to you, Nina. We know that, 3M is the worldwide global company, lots of moving parts. And I'd like to hear, how are you using technology to sort of accelerate your plan, your ESG strategy? How does that help to move along? How does that help to create collaboration with other partners and other parts of the firm?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think one of the things that how we've been able to connect the dots across a large organization behind these goals is our sustainable value commitment. So every product that enters the new product introduction cycle since 2019 has a sustainable value commitment. So some sort of sustainable aspect. And that varies by product because it depends on what the product is doing and how it can be made more sustainable. But the question around kind of technology is, by having that sustainable value commitment a requirement when new products are introduced, then it comes to, hey, how do we share best practices? How are we using our tools and our systems to leverage the knowledge across the business? And as I mentioned, 3M is quite diverse, but we're still actually sharing some of that technology. For example, what makes stop signs reflective, these kind of glass bubbles, are also something that we put in automobiles to lightweight them so that they use less gas. And so that kind of sharing of technology across the business is something that also, is really important. And another way that we do that, which is maybe less technical, is through our Tech Forum chapters. And so it's really this connecting of people on, I have this problem, how do I share it, and creating forums and databases that really technical people are great at navigating to think through, how can I solve some of that? And then from a partnership perspective, I mentioned that we have both corporate partnerships, but also nonprofit partnerships. I think that's what really helps us to move some of the things further forward that we're looking for. So for example, our partnership with the recycling partnership. And so what they're doing is actually trying to increase recycling rates in communities, because we can have a product that is recyclable, but it's through kind of nonprofit funding and looking at, why are some communities recycling less? What are some of those barriers that then that product actually gets recycled? So it's not just something we're saying, but it's something that's happening. So sharing of knowledge through tools, through technology is so important to achieving those goals.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just a teeny follow-up question. AI is in the media like every single day, right? And it gets a bad name. But I'm imagining that that's part of what sort of undergirds what the work that you're doing. Are you seeing it being used, and how is that being used?
I think we're not quite yet getting there, probably because of that, because, hey, how do we trust some of that?
Yes.
And how do we make sure that, as a science-based company, we are very conservative on the things that we commit to and the things that we say, and probably we are like the least marketing the great things about our products and doing than we could be. And so I think that conservative approach to AI, but also thinking about how do we use that going forward to start anticipating once we're comfortable with it.
Great. Thank you. And Alyssa, I know that you are strongly in the EJ space. Could you talk to us a little bit more about what models are you creating so that other companies are able to see what you're doing, or what are you doing as you go into different communities? You started in Camden, you're now in Newark, and I'm imagining you're going nationwide. What are some of the things the models you're creating to make EJ accessible, environmental justice accessible for other organizations who might be thinking about this?
So what we in fact know is that our presence is necessary out in the community. We have to be accountable for what the business that we do. We want to be the very best neighbor that we can be. And what we found out is that there was no one size fits all model, because every neighborhood is different. And while a Newark may resemble a Camden and Camden may resemble Chester, there's different makeups. We recognize that in going into a city, the highest elected official may not be the person that we need to talk to first, based off of the community where they get their news from. and who they respect and the things that they need. We need to check in with those pillars of each community and make sure that we are having the necessary conversations. This job is not one size fits all, but it's worth it. I recognize that, and being from one of Covance's communities, that there was a whole lot of work that needs to be done. So while it started with the Jack Bernardino coming into our building and explaining to me this building I've been looking at all my life and never even knew the name of the company and what exactly it is that you did, there was so much more that needed to be done. We needed to break the conversations down from engineering levels to where people could fully understand. We didn't want to sit high and look low and give people information as if we're just spewing things at them and we don't care whether or not they fully know what it is that we do. We needed to stop, take the time to break our conversations down into different audiences. That was first and foremost. We then needed to, and this is a model that we started with, allow the last conversation to lead you to the next conversation. Before leaving one conversation, we ask, and who else should I speak to? We allow them to tell us who is necessary and who is important in their community. We don't decide, just going straight in that we're just going to talk to these people and nobody else matters, because it's the neighbors surrounding our business that we definitely want to get to. We want to make sure that everybody needs, wants, and has everything that they want to do. Our goal is to educate, is to engage, educate, and empower every community that we are in. We are focused on localized hiring, making sure that those communities are able to access the American dream. We know for sure that not every person in those communities are able to immediately walk into our facility and be able to get one of the high-powered jobs. We recognize that. So we want to bring them in, and we want to create workforce development opportunities. We want to, if there's second chance hiring that we need to do to make sure that they can get into the facility, we are willing to do that. That all happened from a conversation. We recognize that the conversation is where everything began. Go out and have the conversation. We are Covanta. We are in the news. We are a hot topic. We are a hot target. We recognize that. But what we do is we never back down from the conversation. We never go inside. We never shy away from what it is that's being said, because we also recognize, just like I didn't know who Covanta was, many of our communities, they don't know the name. They don't know what it is that we do. So for the 60% of the people in each community that don't know who we are, that is a prime opportunity. So when you asked me about Covanta's challenges, I was like, Covanta and challenge? That's synonymous. This is what happens. But I look at it as an opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity to then go out and explain and teach people exactly who we are, show children in schoolhouses how to recycle, and teach them that there are other opportunities in the STEM realm other than going into the medical field and going into gaming and coding. All of these things are great opportunities. When we get out into the community and we are expanding, I'm so happy to say that my team is expanding. I have been saying for quite some time that we are a mighty team of 4. We are now a mighty team of 6. And I'm pretty excited about that. So, and growing, we'll be 7 in just a little bit longer. But being able to go out and hiring people from those communities, that is pertinent. That is very important, because recognizing that while a model for me worked in Camden, because I had all of those Camden connects, they were all my people. I grew up with them. I knew Big Mama from down the street, and I knew Miss Shirley, and I knew all of these people. Me taking that model to Newark, it didn't work. So recognizing that we needed someone from Newark to access Newark. They could tell us the language. What is important in Newark to you guys? You live here. What's important? Who do we need to speak to? So that's what we're doing. While we're expanding our team, we are strategic and methodical in our expansion, because we know for sure we need to have people, trusted people from those communities, because we stand in the middle not only of the environmental justice, but also ESG for Covanta, because we stand in the middle because they trust us. The community trusts us to bring back what they need, what they're saying to Covanta, and they trust that we're going to bring Covanta's message directly to them. So it is important for us to do the work in such a strategic and methodical way, and not just thinking that we can just pull anybody and put them on the streets, because People want to be heard. And now is the day of accountability. We are in a time of accountability. We need to make sure that people are safe. We need to make sure that they understand things in a way that they can take back and share it with their children. Teaching children is golden, because kids will go home and tell their parents every single thing. So catching them on the school age level and allowing them to bring the information back home. And two, another thing that we do, which is so important to us, is that we have these postcards. It's Covanta by the numbers, where you have all of the important information on the front and back little postcard that people can have. And this, I will say this, that my mom, I've already said that my mom is still in the city. My mom is an 80-year-old beautiful woman just living out her days. And now, since I've been with Covanta, people have accessed my mother's facility. You know, she lives in a senior facility, and they'll come and tell their story. And maybe they're anti-Covanta, and she'll immediately come to me and say, Lissy, that's my nickname, Lissy, what are they saying? They told me some things about you. Please explain this. And then I can assemble a team, because if the science is too far above me, my team will then go out and have that conversation with my mother. We then invite people into our facility for tours so that we can give them the information. We bring them in, we give them lunch. You can stay as long as you want to ask all the questions that you need to ask so that you are well informed. They then tell us what it is that they need. We need more jobs. We need some money to help these children remain safe during the summer months. We know during the summer months is when crime is at an all-time high. In Chester, they just presented us with a grant that they just currently received. They did some research recognizing that blight and unemployment adds to their crime. Mm-hmm. So how can we help you get some of these people off the street and into your facility to work? How is it that you can help us clean up the blight in this city? Mm-hmm. So whatever it is that they need, and every city is a different city. I'm not saying that what worked for Camden is going to work in Newark. Rahway is one of our great spaces where you pretty much can just go and just they'll love on you and we'll love on them back. So it's not such a hard thing. What they ask for it is that we will definitely work with them to provide. And we have community partners that allow this to happen, because we can't be everywhere. Again, I said that we are a mighty team of 6 and growing into 7. So we need community partners to make this work. Mm-hmm. And I am so very happy to be a part of this team and making this thing work, because it is vitally important to have somebody that cares enough to tell you their story, to tell you, to then take back to their company. These are the things that's not working in the community. These are the things that they need. These are the things that they've already survived. And these are the things that nobody seems to care about in these communities. How do we partner with the community and other organizations to make sure that they have everything that they need, want, and deserve?
Awesome. Sounds good.
I know I've said a whole lot, but I love my job, as you guys can tell.
I think we know. I'll move on to Beth, because I then want to get to the audience and get their questions. Beth, Citizens you've developed a holistic, complete strategy for yourselves, and you're doing great work, and you're moving along, facing those challenges. But you've also hinted that you're doing the same for other banks and other companies. Please tell us what that looks like for you and for the company.
Yeah, happy to. As I mentioned earlier, when we think about our constituencies, we think about our clients first and foremost, our customers. And one of the things we wanted to make sure on our journey here, that we're supporting our clients on their financial journey as they think about ESG topics. So we're doing some pretty innovative things. On the climate side, we're training all of our relationship managers for small businesses as well as middle market companies on how to think about climate, what the different words mean, what are scope 1 and scope 2, and then how do I advise our clients on their transition and their plans and how they might need to think about their supply chain differently, what kind of questions they may get from their customers on supply chain issues and how they should be prepared. What are some best practices we're seeing at different companies across our footprint and in different industries? And then how can we bring the best to bear? So one way is just simply that advising. And it's not just climate. So we'll have sessions with our cybersecurity experts for our clients to come and join and learn about things that are happening in cyber. I actually have AI on my team, so we do some sessions on AI as well with our clients to think about how should they be applying these new techniques safely, because there is a lot of safely important on the topic of things like data security. And then finally, we're innovating on the product side. So we've launched things like a green deposits product. So if we have clients who want to invest some of their money in green efforts, they can put the money with our bank, and we make sure that the deposits go against loans that are being used on green projects in our communities. We do something, we're about to launch a social deposit product as well. So similarly, it doesn't just have to be climate. It can be on other topics like we talked about workforce development in other areas. Mm-hmm. So what we're really trying to do is not just think about citizens and how are we approaching ESG, but how are we supporting our clients as well through their journey.
That's great.
That's great. Thank you. I think you've heard from our panelists. You've heard about their challenges, their partnerships, some of the things that they're thinking about as they launch and really create their plans and implement their plans. I'm wondering if you have any questions for panelists. No one? Oh, good. We have someone over here.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Locker from Sabert Corporation, and I have a question. It's probably mainly for Nina, but I think, Alyssa, you also touched on this. It's about finding the balance between when you're setting a strategy, how much you can set it at a corporate level versus individual facilities and things, especially in the context of a global organization where you have manufacturing facilities globally. There's different legislation, not just, regionally, but even locally in some cases. So I'd love to hear kind of how you've balanced that in your strategies.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a good one, especially for a large organization. And we did set our, for example, carbon neutrality goal. One of the things we did, kind of going back to being science-based and being really technical, is that our team did an analysis called the Math with the Path. And we said, all right, well, what are the investments that we're going to have to make? Where are we going to have to make them? And the accountant in me is thinking about the estimated useful life of equipment and when is that equipment going to need to be retired and then redone. And so we kind of, even from the get-go, looked at what are the investments we're going to need to make across the business, across facilities, but then at the same time kind of empowered the bottom up using models like that pollution prevention pays, and then also from our sustainable value commitment. So if a product needs a different type of equipment to be manufactured that can be electrified, then they'll go to the plant and say, hey, we need you to invest in this electric equipment instead of something that uses gas. And so a bit of a top-down and bottom-up approach as well. And then I think the other aspect is by empowering each of the business groups. So by giving the business leaders a connection to sustainability so they see the value for their business to drive it themselves as well.
And for Covanta, I will say we have KPIs that each facility must hit every month. How they hit them is going to look different. Just like I said, each facility in each city is different. Their needs are different. The players are different. Our stakeholders are different. So we allow them to, we have a playbook, a community outreach playbook that everybody can utilize so that they can get some ideas. But how it works for them, it works for them. When they need ideas, I'm so happy that my person is in the room, Andy. Andy is our person that really just helps me help them get their ground game, is what we call it, get their ground game together. However it works for them, it works for them. But we do assist in helping them kind of get it all together and build it up, but recognizing that it will in fact look different. As long as they are hitting those KPIs, we want to make sure that they are doing so many hours out in the community. We want them to do so many hours in touch points, reaching out to community partners or stakeholders, doing tours of the facility and different things like that. So it's going to look different for each facility. As long as they hit the target, it really honestly doesn't matter how it is that it happens. And we're able to assist them along the way.
You know, it's interesting. It occurs to me that all of us have a strategy that we're using holistically across our businesses with a set of well-defined metrics to try to get there. And it's never one group. I think it fails if you try to centralize everything and have it together. And we talked about it as a hub and spoke, but not have lots of different groups pulling together towards the same metrics.
Absolutely.
And I think, metrics are a really important part of this, and just understanding your baseline, right? That I talked at the beginning about Turner has 46 offices across the United States, but we have hundreds of projects, and every project has its own unique challenges. So when we're trying to understand where we start, it's about understanding what that baseline is of where each project is in their current state and how, what the changes they need to make to be able to move to the standards that we've set. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's more about having different options that can provide different opportunities to get to that same end goal.
Hi, I'm Jerry Budd. I'm with Peace in Action. And I have a question specifically for the construction space. I'm curious, and also in banking, just generally speaking, how do you handle backlash resistance to the DEI concepts that are pretty salient right now?
Wow.
Do you want to go first?
I was going to let you go first.
I'll go first because this is a topic we talk a lot about. I mean, interestingly enough, you could say I had the perfect timing, which is I added the ESG work to my title last summer. So pretty much the entire time is when we started to see this backlash to the ESG movement, and we talk about it everywhere up to our board level. But what we've really focused on is that I think people are getting caught up in the language, because what we don't find is that people think that what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, how we've connected it to our core values, and what we want to do around governance or around helping a transition around climate, a green transition, or workforce development or fostering strong communities. You can't really argue that those are good things and things we want to accomplish and things we want to push forward. So what we're finding is that's resonating. And even when we talk, we service people in different communities in the US, and they're not all the same on how they're thinking about this. But when we keep a really client focus, so we talk about, we're supporting our clients as they think about these issues, or we're ensuring that we have the talent that we need to succeed going forward, because we have to tap into diverse pools of talent or we're not going to be able to grow. We find it resonates really well. So a little bit of what we're doing is being careful around the language and not getting caught up in that, but really thinking about the purpose. And we don't see a lot of argument on the purpose behind everything that we talk about as a bank. And that's really critical to us.
Yeah, and I think actually that's a very good point, because I think words are important, right? And thinking about trying to explain what you're trying to accomplish in a way that's relatable. So we talk about this idea of active caring. And I feel like that's such a great way to think about it, because if your job every day is to go out and actively care for the people in your work, on your job site, all the people that you interact with, it's a very interesting way to frame the approach. And I think that's really helpful because it's also personal, right? We want to connect personally with our trade workers on our job sites and with the people that we interact with every day, because that's how they feel safe and supported, and that's how we have a good product in the end as well. So it all sort of ties together, but around that key framework of this idea of active caring.
Hi, so we have a question from the Zoom room. So, can you cite best examples where ESG strategy has produced tangible financial benefits? Questions always come up.
I have one that is actually one of my favorites. So part of when I took this role, I took over our CRA group, and we actually have some of the bankers in the room. But for those of you who don't know, as I said, one of the things banks do is lend to underserved communities or for affordable housing. And so we have a team of people who does that. That's that $6 billion we've lent. It's actually a business that makes us quite significant net income. Now, some of that's tax advantage. So I think this is one of the areas where incentives are really aligned to do good, to also then do good for the company. So we do good in the community and for us. We actually have the single highest productivity in that team in the entire company from a net income per person in the organization. So I do think you can do good and have real financial impact. Things like our deposit product and others I mentioned are another example of that, but we really talk about it as that link to the topics we're talking about today to also have a real impact on the bottom line.
And I will say for Covanta, as we are trying to expand permitting, doing anything, when you go and you're trying to change permits or renew permits, the first thing that we're asked is, who did you speak to? Who did you talk to out in the community? Who have you touched? They want to make sure that we have spoken to the community that surrounds us. So there is nothing that moves unless we have done the work out in the community. And it really is just that simple. It really is that simple. And making sure that we're not trying to bypass systems and we're not trying to bypass people. We are, in fact, interacting with the people. We're letting them know exactly what it is that we're doing. We invite them to our public hearings. We do all of the things. We have individual town hall meetings all throughout the city. And then when we have public hearings, we're making sure that we give them what it is that they've asked us to provide. So business is directly linked with who you're touching out in the community, because if you don't touch them, nothing moves.
I would say there's tangible financial benefits on a couple of fronts. So from the operating side, if you have increased energy efficiency, you use less energy and you have to pay for less energy. And also from a circularity standpoint, if you're able to reuse raw materials or think of how you can design things with less, then you are buying less raw materials. So really reducing our operating costs is a great opportunity. But then when we think about how we serve our customers, well, customers want those benefits too. And we have a goal about helping our customers reduce their emissions so they can have those benefits as well through partnerships and kind of how we can provide products to them.
And I think one way to think about it too is, there are two sides to this, that whether you think of it as risks and opportunities, or I was recently at a conference where they called it a carrot and a stick, right? So there's benefits where you can get new business opportunities or things like that. But then there's also the risk avoidance side of things as we look at legislation. And so I feel like I shouldn't admit this. I actually live in New York. But in New York, we have local law 97, right? So there's more and more legislation that's happening in different places that puts penalties in place if you don't hit specific targets. So whether you want to take a carrot or a stick approach, I think there's both sides of benefit that you can think about.
Question?
What types of language are you using when you're communicating with folks across the company that may be farther from this topic? Sorry.
You might want to repeat that.
Yes, sorry. What types of language are you using when you're talking to colleagues that may be situated sort of farther from this work?
I could go first, but I've talked about this a bit already. I think, focusing on those impact areas, right, of what the impact that we're able to make, right, on our projects and our operations or our employees and our business partners and our communities. And because if you focus on the goal, I think that helps make it more directly relatable, and also understanding that the why is going to be different for different people, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody has, I bet if you asked this room right now what their why was, that everyone would have a slightly different answer. And so understanding that, and that's okay, right? That it's okay that my why is different than your why, but that we're all working towards this common goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not much to add to that. That's a really great response, but I think sustainability means so many different things to different people. Some folks that's composting and more butterflies and bumblebees, but then why are we talking about that at a advanced chemical materials company? And so really bringing it back to why it's relevant, I think, is what we try to bring into when we talk about sustainability. And ESG is an investing term, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. So how are we kind of growing the business through the people, the diversity, and really all the things that have been mentioned would be the language.
And I would say the same. I would say the exact same. Don't have much to add to that, because it really is, it goes back to the why. It goes back to the need for us to touch our communities and just helping them to understand that. and just trying to get buy-in. And buy-in comes through everybody putting their input. If you come up with the idea, more people, if they come up with the idea, they are more inclined to carry it out and see it through. So everybody's why is different, but just helping them to understand that this is it's vitally important to the company. And to move this forward, we all have to be all hands on deck.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. Plus, that's someone on my team. But so we're getting suggestions from all of you. But I would say I think the only thing I would add is that I just think a constant drumbeat, whatever language you're using, is really important, so that it doesn't become an afterthought. That you keep these topics at the forefront all the time. Some in formal ways, some in informal ways, and in conversations, it's critical.
We have one more question here.
Hi, my name is Maggie Wellens. I work with Weeks Marine, and part of our sustainability program, we have local initiatives for all of our, whether you're at an office or a shipyard or another type of facility. But how do you get your craft workers involved in the program? We talk about ground up or top down and bottom up strategies. And, this kind of piggybacks on the last question, but how do you make that happen? Because you can provide folks with the tools, and then how do you really get them engaged in it? Because I feel like it does have to come from both areas, right? It has to come from leadership and then also from the folks that are on the ground.
I can start this one because we have something that I'm really excited about at 3M, the Employee Sustainability Council. And it's just that. It's how do we want people to actually keep doing their own jobs and not be trying to do sustainability jobs, but do them in ways that help us to advance our sustainability goals. And so it's kind of a grassroots effort connected through a kind of a corporate network of what are you doing, what are the best practices, showcasing and spotlighting, and then also giving them an opportunity to create community with each other, because I don't know technical science terms, and so if I'm telling them what to do, it would be wrong. And so how do they connect with each other, get excited about it, and get recognized?
And the other way we do that, as somebody mentioned earlier, is through business resource groups. So how do you have people in different parts of the organization on some of these critical topics, experience shared? Because we have the same thing. Somebody in a branch has a different experience than someone in a corporate office than someone in operations, but you need to make it real for everybody. I think you're right.
And I think a lot of it starts with just simple awareness and education that, sometimes these topics are things that people haven't necessarily considered, but one of the phrases we like to use is this idea that once you know, you can't unknow. Right. And, what are the things that you can help provide different information or, posters or lunch and learns or handouts or, right? Like really simple ways to start the conversation, because I think that's the most important first step, is just starting the conversation.
Absolutely. And I will say too, like everybody else has said, is that it is the education of it all, bringing the information to them, helping them to understand where we are moving as a company. It is imperative that you let everybody know exactly what's going on in the company and nobody is left out, so that we're not moving in one direction and other people are just thinking like, well, what is happening here? To keep everybody informed. So we do those, the workshops and the webinars to keep everybody informed. And then the ERGs, our employee resource groups, is how we kind of get people out to our events, because they then help their people and their groups to understand the importance of, one event versus maybe another. And then we get volunteers that come out through that. But it is a process. I will say it is definitely a process, because a lot of times people want to do the job that they were paid to do. And all of the extra things, like, why is that important to me? It is a process. So I'm not going to act like it hasn't been a process, but with learning and everybody being aware of this is what's important to the company, and not shying away from those conversations and not leaving anybody out of the conversations. It helps to bring people along.
Okay, one last one.
Yep.
So the one question that I wanted to ask relates to branding and marketing. If you have a strong ESG program, I would imagine that would lend to having a stronger brand in the community and with the communities that you're engaging with. I would imagine that employers would like to have a lot of Alyssas on their payroll who are excited and enthusiastic and cheerleaders for their company, as well as having individuals in the community who are saying great things about your company and the impact that
Absolutely.
you're having on families. Have you seen that as an indicator of the success of your ESG programs?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we have. We have organizations that are willing to, if ever we need someone to sit, to go and speak on our behalf. We have, I will bring back Camden, I'm just so, I love Camden. So we have this thing called a Fall Sustainability Festival, and we do it every fall. We've completed it for the last 2 years in October. And last year at the Fall Sustainability Festival, we decided to bring in a camera crew to just catch some raw footage and see what happens. And what happened was everybody wanted to step up to the microphone and tell on camera just how much they appreciate Covanta and their efforts, and how they didn't know the name, but then they were so excited because they see us everywhere and we're doing all of these things and how we've supported these programs. So it turned out to be just the most wonderful thing in the whole world. And it lets you know that the work and the effort that you're putting forward is really, it has a huge return when someone is willing to stand up and speak for you. So yes, we are seeing that more and more around the country, not just in Camden, but Camden is just, I'm a little biased, but we are beginning to see that, and I appreciate that.
Anyone else want to respond to that?
Maybe just one quick thought, because we're out of time, but I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is how you show up on these topics is incredibly important to your brand.
Absolutely.
And the role of brand is getting incredibly important in how customers think about their buying options, whatever industry it may be, whether it's business to business or business to consumer. And we use a stat from RepuTrack. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they work across industries. The American Banker partners with them on some things. So for banking, it's highly relevant. And that exact topic has just continued to rise in relevancy for the strength of your reputation and your brand, your strength on these types of ESG topics. So I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you. Nina, did you want to say one?
I don't need to.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, panelists. This was a really great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that you were all inspired and you learned a few things. I just want to pull 3 things out that I heard consistently throughout this discussion. And one was a holistic view, right? It felt as if everyone sort of came together with a holistic view, started with ESG, moved into sustainability. And so it's looking at all facets of the organization. Secondly, creating a model that everyone can all stakeholders can sort of rally around, right? That was sort of the stake in the ground, the compass, if you will, that everyone then said, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. And you can do it in various ways, but these are the pillars that we are holding forth. So I thought that was important. And then finally, don't go it alone. I heard that consistently, whether it's with partners, inside partners, outside partners, communities, your resource groups, but having a space for people to get input and for you to be able to listen and hear what needs to be done. So those are the 3 things I pulled away. I'm hoping that everyone got something out of the discussion, and thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Ray, I think you have a few comments.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, panelists. It's been 3 hours we've been here learning about ESG, and I feel we just scratched the surface. I was a little bit hesitant, when I was putting this conference together. I wasn't sure who was going to show up. A lot of you have. Maybe we'll be doing this again next year. So we'll get back to you on that. I just want to thank all our speakers here today. So one more round of applause for everyone. I also, of course, want to thank all our sponsors here today. I'm not going to go through that name list again, but they're all on little placards in front of you. Make sure you read each and every name before you leave the room today. I also want to thank, again, I put this together, but I could not have run it without the help of our events team. So thank you, events team, for excellent work. And I just want to make a couple announcements. You all have the agenda. There are several events that are coming up. In particular, I will mention the Women's Business Leaders Forum, which is one of our signature events. There'll be over 500 women business leaders at that event. It is absolutely worth going to. And I will tell you, get your pens out. October 10th, we are doing our third annual Energy Conference. It is an excellent event. Again, obviously, a lot of you here care about energy issues. It falls right into everything we've talked about. We're going to have CEOs from major utilities. We're going to have energy leaders throughout the state and the nation there. So October 10th, you'll be getting more and more information. When you see emails from me saying Energy Conference, don't delete, open it, read it, register. So I thank you all for being here today, and hopefully I will see you all next year. Thank you.